appeared before Nero, and it would appear, according to tradition and some of the early writings, that in Paul's first appearance before Nero, that Nero set him free, and that Paul returned to Ephesus, where he was ordered again to be arrested by the Roman government, brought back, and ordered beheaded by Nero. And it is interesting that Nero, in his beginning of his reign as the emperor of Rome, seemed to be a fairly decent fellow. But there was that, it would seem, madness. And this madness or insanity, it seemed, happened about the time that Paul gave his witness to Nero, and Nero rejected. It was said that Nero would get in his chariot, he would have Christians fastened to poles, they would pour on them flammable liquids, light them, and he would go riding in his chariot through the gardens that were illuminated by the burning bodies of the Christians, screaming and in nude, just in his chariot, and just madness. And the early church called him the Beast. It is interesting when John is writing this, he said, the beast that was and is not, he is the eighth. But he said there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen. Of the 5 that had fallen, Nero was one that had fallen. And the 6th, of course, is going to come, and then the 7th will reign for a short season. But the 8th is one of the 7, which would make it perhaps Nero. And there are those Bible expositors who do believe that Nero will perhaps be released by God from the Abuso, and the world will wander after the beast, the Antichrist. And this is possibly one of the possibilities. There is, of course, there is that attempt to identify the beast as Judas Iscariot. Jesus called him the son of perdition. But just, we don't know. It's something to think about, something to just, consider. The 10 horns, which you saw, are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive power as kings for 1 hour or a short period of time with the beast. So we talk about the revival of the Roman Empire, and not in the same sense that Rome was the power before, in that long period of the history of the world, but now ruled by 10 kings. And you go back to Daniel, and he sort of talks about the 10 horns that came up, and 3 of them fell, and the one horn had eyes like, and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows, and that it is a reference to the final world governing empire. Now there's going to be a world church or a world religious system, and I would not really call it the church, but here is a reference in this chapter to this world religious system that's going to arise, and in the beginning will be aligned with the beast. and the being empowered by the beast. Now, it's interesting that many of the leaders of the world are of the opinion that the problems of the world really stem from the various religions that are opposed to each other. And if men did not have strong religious convictions and strong religious beliefs, whether they be Islam or Christianity or these strong religious beliefs, these are the things that create the wars and thus the problems of the fighting and the wars in our world, and keep the world really in this state of conflict because of the diversities of the religions. And their idea is, if we could get the religions to unite, that we could then really have world peace. And so, as the church will be taken out at the rapture, it will open the door for the uniting of the religions of the world. It is interesting how that the Pope has made sort of innovations toward the Islam leadership, and is sort of inviting them to join back with the church or with Rome. There is that movement among the Protestant churches towards Rome in many circles. In fact, the emergent church has gone back to the practices, a lot of the practices of the Roman church, the icons and so forth, the prayer circles, or the and they are more or less returning to Roman practices. There is a great emphasis on the Church of England to return back to Roman, the Catholic Church, and so that is a movement that is already instigated in our world today, and will probably, once the true church is taken out, there will be nothing that will stop that joining together of the religious systems. There, of course, as Brian was mentioning this morning, old but new religion, or it is gaining a lot of strength, and that is the movement of ecology and the worship of the earth, Gaia, the worshiping the earth, and that is gaining a lot of attention, and a lot of the people of seeing the earth as a organism, and how that we need to worship the earth. It is interesting how that this is very demeaning to man, as the value is put on other forms of life, and really looked upon as more important than man's existence. A few years ago, we had a terrible fire down in Laguna Beach area. The fire went on down into Emerald Bay, destroyed a lot of houses there. And the fire was enhanced by the fact that the ecologists would not allow them to remove the brush and all back a ways and form these fire trails, because